We're going to take a quick look at Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown demo on the RX 6800 XT with the Ryzen 5900X. Before we begin though, I want to highlight the fact that this is an early demo version of the game and that the full release is still 3 months away as of right now. Some of the issues could very well be fixed by the time the game's released, with the biggest one being CPU utilization, which we'll talk about a bit later in this video. Now let's go ahead and begin with the settings. The focus of this video will be 1440p, and I've gone ahead and maxed all the settings out here. We're not going to use any FSR yet. The issue with this demo is that there is only FXAA for anti-aliasing, which doesn't do a very good job. There is no TAA, so I'm hoping they can add that when the game goes live. I have a feeling they probably will polish things a bit further, at least I hope. But as you can see, we're in the mid 50s here with the 6800 XT at 1440p, and look at, we even dropped as low as the high 40s. Our 12-core CPU is crunching away at 40% CPU usage, which is pretty, well, what the hell is this guy doing? Okay, you must be new to the game. But anyway, what I want to try here is I want to use FSR AA. So we're going to use it as a form of anti-aliasing, which actually does a pretty good job. It does clean up the flicker very nicely. However, the downside, or a bit of a downside, is the fact that it will make the game a little bit more demanding than it already was, especially since we're GPU bound, and that'll add some more processing time to do the anti-aliasing. But we're going to check out FSR quality a bit later as well. But as you can see now, we're regularly dropping to the low 50s and high 40s. Still though, the game is fairly smooth. I mean, we're not getting any stutters or anything like that. Which can be very annoying. But what we can do here, there is a couple settings I found where we can claw back a bit more performance without much loss to visual quality. One of those settings is the global illumination. I recommend setting this to high. Don't leave it on very high, regardless of the type of GPU you have. Just the cost is a little too high, personally. Another one that you can tone down a notch is view distance. Go from ultra to high and you'll claw back some performance. So we went to 63 FPS now, and we seem to be right at around 60, which is kind of what we want to see. Now if you pay close attention to our GPU use, we're dropping into the 80s% sometimes. So we are hitting CPU bottlenecks in this case. And yeah, a 5900X can even maintain 60 FPS. That's a problem. However, having spoken to a couple game developers, and something that I've heard about is usually optimizations usually happen at the last stage of game development. That's why this feels more like a beta to me, because it seems like an early version of the game that's not yet fully optimized. I personally don't believe that they're going to release the game like this, so that's why I'm saying I'm trying to be more fair. I want to be critical, obviously, because I am testing the game, checking out the performance and how it runs on this hardware. I think it's only fair to point out the flaws, but I think it's also fair to pass judgment once the paid final product is released. But if we're already hitting CPU bottlenecks at 1440p native, what is FSR quality gonna be like? Well, we're gonna check that out. We're gonna check out FSR quality, and we're also gonna do a race, because race can be even more CPU intensive as well. Let's go ahead and do FSR quality. So from this point on, we're going to be CPU bound entirely. If you look at our GPU utilization now, it's in the 70s and 80s%. So this is as fast as a 5900X can handle in this version of the game. And as you can see, we're able to stay at around 60 most of the time, but we do dip below that sometimes. And what we're doing now is we're going to make our way to a racing event. And I want to talk more about this as well, because the servers have been a disaster in this demo. I've tried to enter races so many times to capture some footage and test things out, and it's been like the most stressful thing in the world. I'll always get server errors, and sometimes I'll enter a race and then halfway through the race or right at the beginning it'll disconnect from the server. So I'm not sure that has to be fixed, because you could have the best looking game, the most well optimized game in the planet, But if you can't do the racing events, then you know, that's an issue. But I have a feeling that they're probably going to fix that, because like I think this should have been called a beta test. I literally do, because we associate demos with something that represents the final product, even though they'll put a little disclaimer at the bottom that demos are not the final product. But they historically have been, like Square Enix, right? They release a demo, you can carry your progress onto the live version of the game, and it usually is representative of the final version of the game. That's usually what we've experienced. So I definitely believe they should have called this a beta. I think people would have been more forgiven. Definitely a lot more I would have been more forgiven, but I'm still going to try to be fair. Anyway, let's go ahead and enter this race, and let's look at some crazy CPU limitations. Here we go. If you pay close attention to our FPS and GPU use, you'll see that we're going to drop to the high 40s sometimes. So while there are areas like these congested city areas that if you're driving in the open world, you will drop to the 50s, even with the Ryzen 5900X. I've dropped below 60, even with the 7800X 3D, guys. But when you actually racing, it becomes even more CPU intensive. It does. So that's why I'm saying that this has to be an early version of the game, which, to be fair, it does say that at the bottom left corner, but I just can't see this game releasing like this, because if it did, right, it would have to be a 30 FPS game on consoles, and I don't think that's going to do very well. Now, I am editing this the next day, so I recorded the footage last night, and I actually did get to put in a couple hours of gameplay without much server issues. So I did get to do some races. I did progress through some story events as well. I think there is a decent game here. There is stuff to do, things to level, there's clans, and I can see the online component of the game being actually quite fun, with rivalries and stuff like that. So I think there is a good game here that's perhaps not being as well represented by this demo, be it the performance issues or the server issues. I think it's left people more frustrated than it's done a good job marketing the game, if that makes sense. At least that's what I think. So I was a bit harsh on this game when I reviewed it on my 4090 and 7800X 3D, because I was like, what the heck is going on? You know, this game runs pretty badly, and it's a demo. But I think it's important to be fair, and I am going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to wait and see until the game releases, the live version of the game, you know, when they're actually asking money for it. But if it releases like this, or just slightly improved, it's going to fail, even though they're only asking $50 for it. But anyway, I hope they do fix it, because I would never like to see a game fail, personally, especially a game as beloved as this with a lot of fans. But hope they can fix some of these issues. Which, speaking of which, I did get a server error right at the end of the race, which means that you don't get credit for the race. But it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think, or what your experience been like. If you did like the video, give it a like, and consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this. I do appreciate all you watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.